This episode is brought to you by Progressive Commercial Insurance. Business owners, meet Progressive Insurance. They make it easy to get discounts on commercial auto insurance and find coverages to grow with your business. Quote in as little as 6 minutes at progressivecommercial.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company. Coverage provided and serviced by affiliated and third-party insurers. Discounts and coverage selections not available in all states or situations.
Come meet me at the Musial with Alan and Daniel. We'll talk about the Cardinals all night long. Everyone come gather round, listen to your favorite sound. We'll talk about the Cardinals all night long. We'll talk the games and all the rest, about the team that we love best. We'll talk about the Cardinals all night long. We're gonna talk about the Cardinals all night long.
Good morning and welcome into another edition of Meet Me at Musial. I'm your host, Daniel Shopta at C70. With me as always, Alan Medlock, Medlock1 on the Twitters. Coming to you Saturday morning. The Cardinals put it to the Brewers a little bit last night. Alan, I know you were out doing the high school football thing. I had other things I didn't get a chance to watch, but even if the Brewers are kind of okay, we're in, and the Cardinals are definitely not. It's kind of nice to see them, put something together against a division rival.
Sure, and it's one of the save face games, and go in, and I don't know what it was. I kind of expected them to play well this weekend, being the last weekend at home. Yeah, I think the Brewers are really good. I mean, it's one of those situations where at this point, I kind of pulling for the Brewers. I hate to say, I would just I've kind of grown to like Pat Murphy and everything a little bit, but. Needless to say, it was nice to see Burleson have a big game. Gray, it pitched well. One of those games that he'll throw together every once in a while, and yeah, just exciting to watch on a Friday night. I wish I could have watched more. I definitely will tonight, which I'm sure the results won't be the same. But no, way to end a good one at home. And it's funny doing these weekly. You kind of get surprised how things creep up on you. But even after an extremely eventful summer, with my family and everything, can you believe that we only have the 8 games left?
No, it
It's
is. Yeah, 2 games left at Busch Stadium, counting tonight, and tomorrow is amazing. I mean, it feels like we were just talking about it. Spring training and things like that. Of course, I guess you were so busy at the beginning of it, you've been doing it a little bit less, so maybe that's part of it too. But yeah, no, it feels like, and it still feels like, I don't know. We're going to talk about Katie Woo's article here in a little bit, because I think, as always, Katie has set the tone for the discussion in Cardinal Nation for a while. But
yeah.
it just feels like they're still. I don't, for the fact that this was runway season, and that's really what we get to in Katie's article. Either we don't have answers, or we have answers that we don't like. And I think it's hard to believe that we've gotten here, right? I think part of it maybe in the mindset of, man, there's still time to turn this around. There's still time for Jordan Walker to do something. There's still time for this or that. And then you look and no, there's not time. There's 8 games left. And that's it.
But yeah, that's and you knew it was coming, and I think that we've kind of broken stuff down as best we can in the past few 4 to 6 weeks of, hey, what's happening here? What do you think's going on? And what are some of the names that we're going to keep? And I like those articles that come out, and then it actually it puts the spotlight on the things that, hey, your runway season is over. What'd you do with it? And I thought that was kind of a good part of the article yesterday, because you're thinking, okay, well, wow, what is this we have next year? And in some of the highlights that she pointed out shows that some of them don't have next year, and some of the ones that we actually think probably should may not as well. And yeah, you just realize that, hey, this 25 where we knew that it was an extended tryout essentially may not have gone well for some, and may have led to what could be an extended tryout basis being a rebuild, seemingly on the horizon.
Yeah, I think there were a few comments that I saw, and I wasn't online very much yesterday to look at things. I read Katie's article, and saw some reaction, but some idea of, oh, the Cardinals are just figuring this out, or something of that nature. Why haven't they done something about this sooner? And I think, I mean, to some degree that's fair, but I also think, I mean, this is what they did, right? They gave the, I don't know, and maybe I'll ask you, what do you think would have been different about this year had Chaim Bloom taken over at the beginning of the year versus coming in this winter?
Oh, that's great. I mean, gosh, I don't even know. To me, that opens up a whole line of questions of, what was the directives of the plan, and how
Mhm.
did how did you want to see it through? Because to me, I don't know, and I hate to go back and forth on this. Was there very little Bloom input to the big league roster? That's what
Mhm.
I felt. I don't know why I feel like there was much more than we probably assumed. Like
Yeah.
this may have been a team effort of, hey, this is the only way that we're going to know, and we've got to let everybody play. So I don't know if it would look that much different. I do think the roster, after reading the article, and I know this kind of sounds knee jerk, will be significantly different next year. But I really don't know. I don't know if there would have been. I don't know. I'm not certain it would have looked much different day one this year than it will day one next year, even if it was Bloom.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think, I think the major impacts Bloom probably he had at least some say in, right? I mean, doesn't mean that everything that he wanted happened. I think we might have seen a more aggressive trade deadline. Um, we might have seen a few things different here and there, but I don't know that this year would have been, because I do think they wanted to let these guys get a full as much time as possible and see what they could do with it. Um, and I think, for better or for worse, for the fact that you have to waste not only this year but now maybe 2 or 3 more years. And again, I say waste. That's probably not fair, right?
Yeah,
Because it didn't turn out well on the field. Although it could have, and I know there's an argument to be made that if they had made like 1 or 2 more moves here or there, they would actually be in the playoffs. But
yeah,
I want to
yeah,
we'll circle back to that because I want to talk about that a little bit.
yeah,
Um, but um, I don't I don't think it was a waste because they got the information. They got information that they
yeah.
can use, and sometimes the only way you get that information is to let them go out there, and if they fail, they fail. And I think we've seen that, you know, not every answer is positive.
Sure, sure, and that's no, and I agree with that. I mean, it's one of those that I we were. It was kind of sold as dev- a development year, yet you feel like you could somewhat be competitive, which could. But I don't know if the offseason moves lend that to be true,
Mhm.
because you were in the mix. Honestly, you were really, really in the mix. I know that you could say you were 3.5 games out, 3 weeks ago, one of those things, but we knew they didn't have the pitching after the deadline to sustain any run. But at one point, you were in second place, and it was close, a close second place with the team that you had. What would have happened in the offseason if you did add arms? I mean, would that have changed anything? Which kind of goes back to the question of, I think this year was determined no matter who was kind of running it, and I don't. I think Ollie's comment um in the article was more of, I think we have a lot of clarity, but I wish we had more clarity on certain situations. I think that's the answer we're going to keep hearing. So I don't know if it was necessarily a waste, because I do think you have found some pieces to a lineup that's going to be successful, and it will be day in day out pieces. But a waste to me seems like that seems like an incorrect statement.
Yeah. That was in a quote so important. Katie used it twice in her article. I don't know that she knew that, but it isn't. It is. I mean, they have figured that out. I think about when you talk about what they could have done last year. Could they have been more competitive this year? And I think, yeah, maybe, but I also feel like that's kind of what got them into this problem in the first place, right? Was Mo
Yeah.
trying to find that one free agent move, that one thing that could, band-aid over the problems that they were having and get them
Yes.
into the postseason. They could have gone out and gotten a couple more veteran pitchers or I mean, even if they had gone out and gotten a top of the line guy, which that's not going to happen, but if they'd gotten themselves enough to be a wild card team this year, you're just looking at the same problem. You're just still kicking the can down the road. And at some point in time, if you want to build something sustainable, you're going to have to let the past die, kill it if you have to.
Yeah.
So I don't know, you know, I would have liked to seen them be committed. It is frustrating to know that, at points this year, especially, even getting into August, that there was a chance that they could have made the postseason. But then again, I mean, even if you add a pitcher or two that gets you, you know, 5 more, 7 more wins this year and you're in the postseason, it still doesn't feel like a team that's gonna go deep, right? I mean, you
Yeah.
get out there, you get knocked out in the first in 2 games and then what, you know? So I again, I don't wanna necessarily fully defend management, but I think that if your mindset is we've got to we've got to revamp this thing, at some point you just have to, let it ride, and even if you could do something, not because it's just gonna, push you back a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. That's seems like we had heard that before, and it was just the toe on the line of competitiveness, or the 500. So yeah, it did seem like that a little bit, and it's to me, yes, the idea of a rebuild and not being competitive for the next 3 or 4 years. Yes, it's one that I don't like because I'm selfish, and
Mhm.
it's I don't know. I don't want to have to wait for 5 years of it, of non-competitiveness, which I'm think that you're going to be in, considering this is year three of a non-playoff season.
Yeah.
So I would think that that's at a minimum. Um, I do. I'm all that being said, I am excited to see the next chapter, just because it's some change, and I would like to see some positive change. Whether that, and I just want to see a positive direction, and that may be 100 losses next year, but at least still we will have an idea of what's to come, and what could happen, through the draft and development process, and who stays around, and things like that. So at the end of the season, that I wouldn't say was frustrating, was actually better than I assumed. What I did not like is to see the lack of fans that were in the stands, and what it looked like on
Mhm.
on television every night, of what has happened and how far we've fallen. That's one thing that I want to see changed, and that was the eye opener to me. Of Yeah, there's some energy in the ballpark. There was no doubt about it. Even in the series that we went to, it was fun. I mean, people were locked in. The fan base is still, there's tons of jerseys. The history's there. You can feel it all, but you could also tell that people are just pissed off,
Mhm.
and because it was rudderless, and that's the thing now, that even with the results, and I love it, and we were excited through the summer to be into it so late. It's still nice that now you're just like, okay, I'm a Mo guy, and maybe an apologist at some point, but what I'm glad now that we're gonna see some direction,
Mhm.
and it's a new leadership, so to speak, and we'll see if that changes anything. I just have, not to end on a down note, but I just hope that it's different with this new leadership, and it's not the new ownership that's been the problem the whole time.
Yeah. Yeah. And I feel like I don't know. Ownership is going to be what ownership is gonna be. I mean, I think it's gonna be I don't think it's going to necessarily be an obstacle, but it also may not be as much of a help as you want. I mean, we've seen. I think ownership wants to win, but sometimes we've talked about this a lot of times. Ownership wants to win on their terms. Um, that being said, they like Katie pointed out in her article, they gave Bloom a 5-year contract that starts next year, right? I mean, and they know it's gonna take a while. And so I think that helps. Um, I think that it is gonna be hard to go through this with. I mean, because even the last couple of years, since 23, we thought, okay, 23 was a bit of an aberration. They'll be better in 24. They'll go out and they went out and got Sonny Gray and the other, Lance Lynn, Kyle Gibson. Everything's going to be, not great, but it'll be better. And it was better. And they, finished over 500. I just don't, and then we went into this year thinking, okay, well, these young guys are going to step up and they're going to take that step. And we're going to see, Jordan Walker not being, jerked around and more playing time for Nolan Gorman and all this kind of stuff. And I mean, we did, but it didn't necessarily turn out the way we want to. And now you go into this winter not not necessarily having the hope of next year is going to be better. And I mean, that's a long, long time, you know, since the Cardinals have done that.
Yeah,
Um, I mean, you've got to go back to honestly before this ownership to have that, right? You've got to get back into the early '90s, and you and I remember that time. Some of the people listening here don't. But it wasn't, it was just, the Cardinals were an afterthought. And it's been, getting to 30 years or so since that's been the case. But, it's cycling back around and it feels like the Cardinals are going to be that afterthought for the next 2 or 3 years as they hopefully develop some talent. Um, but we'll have to wait and see how that goes.
sure, sure. And the and we had talked about that, and it's one of the I think this may be the ebb and flow of every organization now that we've
Mhm.
seen, because I think that the Cardinals may be one of the last holdouts of really having to tear down and redo, and didn't think we would ever have to. But I think that the warning signs have been there for a while, and I think the last one is the fact that you have a fan base that's just apathetic to what you're putting out on the field,
Mhm.
and I think there needs to be some new energy to that. Um, all that being said, I still have major questions about how they're going to complete innings next year on the mound.
Yeah.
Because I just don't know. I mean, I know you have some guys coming back, off of linked injuries and stuff like that, but I still just don't know how they're going to get through things. And that's the worrisome for me, because that's the things that lead me to believe that, hey, you're probably going to be at that 100 loss plateau next year because you just don't
Mhm.
have the inning or the arm to cover the innings.
Mhm. Yeah, I think that's a legitimate fear, and it definitely is not gonna be like it is this year where the Cardinals have thrown, 6
Yeah,
starters, and then assuming no injuries or nothing happens in the next, week, the Cardinals are gonna have thrown, the only change they're gonna have is, Fetty's gone and McGreevy came in. Nobody else made any extra starts. We didn't see, it doesn't look like we'll see Quinn Matthews coming up, which we thought at the beginning of the year. We're not gonna see, I think there was some hope of maybe a Tink Hintz debut, which obviously isn't gonna happen, and questionable, I think, to some degree, whether it ever will. So, yeah, I mean, obviously, you're gonna have more turnover than we had this last year, especially if Sonny Gray decides he doesn't wanna be part of a rebuild, which I think is a legitimately a
sure.
possibility. So, I think you're gonna have a lot of these guys that we saw them sign, that are playing in Memphis, those guys that have some major league experience that haven't, and they may just, you know, arms that we may not, was it Aaron Wilkinson or something like that that they signed and, that they signed somewhat for depth, but I think we'll see a lot of those guys next year. And you're right, that doesn't necessarily mean, I mean, they might catch something, they might see something. The development staff may be able to tweak something here or there, but the odds are, they're going to cover innings that just, that's about it. I mean, I think that's why people are worried about a Miles Michaelis extension, is because they may not be good innings, but they would be somebody to cover some innings. I don't think they're going to go there, but I understand why people might think they would.
Sure, it's the idea of the rebuild. I honestly, that has never really bothered me. I didn't mind the middling area here, like in a situation like this, because I felt like this was pretty much what your rebuild's going to look like anyway. And you have some guys that stepped up and some that clearly didn't. All that being said, what bothered me the most about any of the idea is the fact that all their top arms got hurt.
Mm-hmm.
And I looked at it, I'm like, I don't know what this looks like on a positive note as
Right.
far as rotation wise next year. And that's why I've kind of always rode the fence on some of those veteran starters and thinking, well, how similar is that going to be to what we've seen? Mainly because they may not have any choice.
Right. Yeah, I think that is really the key, right? I mean, obviously the offense has its own issues, and it's going to have
Sure.
some more next year as well. But I think you've got that hope of JJ Weatherholt's going to come up and help in that regard. And the offense has had some bright spots this year. Um, Although, again, I mean, not to be too depressing, but if Wilson Contreras decides he wants out, and they do trade Nolan Arenado, who granted wasn't necessarily a huge part of the offense this year, but was something. Um, you know, this gets thin pretty quick unless because I mean, it feels like to me, you know, your Gorman and your Walker don't have much value, I think, right now.
Sure.
But it's also hard to imagine, at least for me, Nolan Gorman creating value next year. So what do you do there? The guys that you do have value with, like Brendan Donovan, do you trade him to try to, jumpstart a little bit of this rebuild, and get a couple more pieces that, again, need some work? It, I mean, yeah, I mean, you could get down to the studs pretty quickly on this team, and they're not doing it because of the old, it's not tanking. It's not the old, let's do terrible so we can get draft picks. I just think they've kind of worked themselves into this corner that this may be the only way out of.
Sure. Yeah, that's it's well put. It's offensively next year. I think that I mean, is part of this going to be a situation where you're going to see a Weatherholt play every day, good or bad, unless things just completely go bad, without the idea that he's going to go down if he has a stretch where he's not hitting. I mean, is that the kind of things that we're looking at in the rebuild type situation?
Yeah.
But you're right. I mean, it's still they're going to need components of a lineup, and like the Contreras. Yes, I feel like in the article it felt like the two highlights were Herrera and Burleson,
Mhm.
and I somewhat agree with that,
Mhm.
especially with Burleson, to where you feel like those two are pretty safe. Well, then then it gets back to this. If Herrera doesn't catch, that's not necessarily a good thing because you're going to have someone that fits that role.
Yeah.
And they did talk about outfield defense a lot with Burleson, which kind of surprised me because in a situation where Contreras would leave, I think that he would move to first base naturally, and maybe, and I don't think you would see a drop off, and it may even be better defensively for him to be there. But it's still, yeah, that's your offensive productivity would be leaving with Contreras too.
Mhm.
And I think that was the point you were making. So you're right. I mean, I get the feeling that, and we had kind of talked about this a little bit last week, where even though there was an uptick with Gorman, that this kind of seems like the writing on the wall for him. Um, and that will be a little bit interesting to see because I don't know if he's back because I think that we've seen who he is because I think that
Mhm.
even this situation, you're like, well, he's had a runway, so to speak, and we know what he is. And there's some jolts of power and jolts of a good run, but that may be part of the problem too. So, I'm not really sure how this goes, and that's part of the excitement to it. But in our realm, it's also the unknown that's a little bit scary. And yeah, I don't want to have a season like the White Sox had last year just to be better in 5 years.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't really wanna be challenging. I don't wanna look like the Rockies that they all that kinda stuff. Um, but, I mean, yeah, and I don't think they will, but I don't know. I mean, I just don't know I don't know what a, multi-year rebuild looks like. I don't know how
Yeah,
you
yeah.
keep keep looking for small victories in a, pile of not good stuff. Um, I don't know, how this
Is there
works, and maybe we need to
is
talk to some of these small teams to do it.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
well, is there any chance that this rebuild in it's so minor league based that the major league team doesn't see much? It's going to be like this for the next 3 years, basically, is what I'm trying. Is there any chance that happens?
Uh, I mean, yeah, I would think that possible. I don't know. I mean, is this
I
better?
know,
Is it better to be
because I
like
don't know
this than
what the difference is really.
yeah. I mean, is it better to be like this for 3 years and then all of a sudden come out of the gate and be, in the playoffs, or do you need the
Yeah,
I don't know. I don't know. I don't know what
I,
I mean, and you asked about
you're
go
right.
ahead.
No, you're right. I mean, there's so many questions that go to it, even after reading an article that 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 lends to a little bit of clarity that hey, some of these, yes, you're probably going to see the guys that are right that are due arbitration. They're going to be out, and don't be surprised if others are as well. And I get it, but you still have to fill the team, and that
Mhm.
some of that just to fill it numbers wise may have to come from outside the organization.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, but there's always journeymen that are out there, right?
Yeah,
Guys that bounce around, guys that have never really kinda gotten a shot. And sometimes that clicks, right? I mean, we have seen, it used to be when Cardinal Devil Magic was a thing that you would have those guys come in like a Jeremy Hazelbaker and, tear things up for a few months or something
yeah,
of that nature. So I mean, are they gonna they're gonna sign a free agent this offseason. I mean, it just won't be of anybody of any significance, I think. But they're gonna have to. I think you're right. They're gonna have to because otherwise I don't feel like they want us to start the Memphis Redbirds in St. Louis.
sure.
I don't think that they want to be a AAA team trying to play Major League Baseball. Um, so I do think they will shore up around the edges, even if it's just a bunch of replacement players that generate more churn. I think that's one thing we will see next year is a lot more people coming in and going out as they try to figure out, what's going, how things are. I don't think you would have a Miles Michaelis pitch all year long. I mean, granted, that's contract situation. There's a lot of different things going on, but that kind of player, if a guy comes in and has a 5 something ERA in June, he's probably not making it till the end of the year, unless it's some young pitcher. But basically, if they brought in a free agent to cover some innings, they're going to rotate. I think that we're gonna see more of that churn even starting this offseason than we've seen in quite some time because the Cardinals were very hesitant to move on from players, or they might then we might need that guy here in a couple of years. We gotta keep him. I don't think Chaim Bloom's gonna think that. I think well, if we need him, we'll find somebody like that.
Yeah.
We're not gonna keep him here while we need somebody else to develop.
Yes. Yeah. And that's I wondered about that because it when we were talking about how things may look different, it may be one of those that you feel like guys are going to be given that run, given the opportunity. And I hate using the term runway anymore, I mean it's appropriate for the moment, I guess. But
Maybe we'll get a
the
new simile next year.
yes, good call. That we might not get those headliners though. I don't
That's
know if
true.
Bloom's the type, one of those things. But yeah, the um, I to me, I was like, okay, is part of this going to be, hey, your weather holds,
Mm.
your crooks. Guess what? You're playing every day next year. Make the best of it. Here you go. This is year one. And then in the back of my mind, I'm thinking it's not going to be a situation where guys just up and down the whole time, but it may have to be like you said, because just sheer numbers alone, I don't know if it's going to make sense. But yeah, I mean, it goes back to how many guys are we going to see start a game next year?
Yeah.
On the mound, I just don't know. There's an excitement factor of a Crooks Weatherholt everyday situation that would be nice, especially if it's to me a win Donovan Burleson, infield to
Mhm.
go with it. I would like that. I
Yeah.
just don't know if we're going to see that.
Yeah, I you asked you asked a while ago. I don't think I ever got around to answering the question you had about whether he would play every day at the major league level, even if he's struggling. Um, and I think that's probably the case. I think he probably would, unless it was starting to take a toll on
Where
his,
you, yeah, where you
mental
feel like
state
it
or
was
something. Yeah.
100%. I completely agree with that.
Um, because again, this is whose line territory. The scores are made up and the results don't matter. That's kind of where we're going to be over the next couple of years. The results aren't going to matter too much. We want, the results on the field. I like wins and losses. What's going to matter is if JJ Weatherholt is making adjustments and is holding his own at the major league level. And if he struggles at doing that at some point in time, if it's come to, May 30th and he's hitting 198 and just looks lost, then yeah, I think he goes back to the minor leagues and gets a little bit, a little bit of handle on things. But I don't, if he's hitting 198, but is having a good approach, then they probably run with him. Because again, you don't have to worry about it. It's not like not like a Colton Wong situation where he came up and then they, sent him down and, or even Jordan Walker early in his career going down, coming up, going down. I think when Weatherholt comes up, they plan for him to stay up, but they're not going to rule out. It's just going to be it's not going to be oh, you had 2 bad weeks, you're going back down. It's going to be an extended period of time, and then they'll reevaluate and look at how he's doing, not necessarily the results.
Yeah, yeah. The that'll be interesting to see, because that's part of the, to me, I did kind of wonder why he didn't get a shot this year at some point.
Mhm.
And and you know what, there may be, I would say, not necessarily. I don't want to say injury, like he's hurt and they're disguising it. There may
Right.
just be a, hey, your first year in professional baseball was rough on your body type situation. You
Mhm.
know what I mean? Why we haven't seen anybody, but I do, for his sake, kind of hate that his first taste may be on opening day next year. That heaps a lot of pressure on somebody, but I
But
don't think he'd have it any other way.
yeah, but on the flip side, um, opening day is the day people are gonna be there, right? I mean, you could bring him up now and he'd play in front of a crowd of
Yeah, good point. Good point.
17,000 people, or you could come into opening day and have that, at least get that charge before playing in front of 17,000 people. Um, I I don't know. I think, I'm sure the Cardinals are, to some degree keeping their options. He was out for, almost a week with some just general soreness at some point in time recently. And, there was no need to push. I mean, as much as excitement as it would be to have him come up and get a chance to play, I mean, he wouldn't move the needle a whole lot. And they probably already know whether they think he can hit in the major leagues or not. And 2 weeks of hitting off, against teams that are in a pennant race, most of them, may not be the best way. Maybe you go out with you go into the winter with a good experience versus, you came up to the major leagues and quote, quote, failed, right? You'd rather go into the winter a little bit different mindset. So I don't know. I mean, I think there's a lot of reasons. And it wouldn't have moved the needle a whole lot to bring him up now anyway. So, why do it?
Yeah, yeah, that's a great point. Um, and it's one of those. I'm just super excited to kind of start seeing how
Mhm.
that infield's going to shake up a little bit, and see what we have, and uh, and see how he contributes, and all those things. And it's one of those to where in the article, I know that we keep referencing that, and I
Mhm.
appreciate it, but that's kind of the second year in a row that we've had a timely article, Britain, of that Katie has put out, that has kind of led the direction of what, or led to what our direction of
Mhm.
talking points will be for the off season, really. What safety what who is the safest right now, you think, on the roster, and has that changed from what we thought last week? Because that was one of the questions I said of, hey, who stays, who goes, and I know that you put out a poll question
Mhm.
is who is most likely to be gone. But like you personally, who do you think? Do you think Wynn is a guy that is probably more likely to a contract extension or a trade? What? How do you feel about those things?
I tell you, yeah, I did and if you haven't seen it, and you follow me on Twitter, go find it. It's you can vote on who everybody that you think is going to be here or going to be gone. We'll do that. We're going to keep track of that this winter, and we'll award points and all that kind of stuff. But anyway, I've looked at it. We've had 133 people right now that have filled this out, and 132 of them think that Mason Wynn is going to be here next year, and the one was a one of our favorite jokesters doing what he does. But so yeah, I think Wynn's a lock for being here. I think that if you're going to build around, I think you build around him and probably Herrera at some position. Now, Katie kind of did put out, if he's not catching, does that work? And I don't know. I mean, does the value change? But I also know that he's probably one of the only real bats in this lineup, and I think you've got to get him out there somewhere. I would be interested. You were talking about them commenting on Burleson's defense. I wonder if they would be more comfortable with him in the outfield and Ivan Herrera playing first should Contreras leave. I
Yes,
mean, again, Contreras would have to do some work this winter and all that, but I think that you would probably, and maybe it's just wait and see, but I think that they would probably like him at first and then let Burleson play the outfield, unless they think Herrera can make those jumps. And he's taken to the outfield all right. I don't remember too many glaring problems. He's just not going to have the range. But I feel like that would probably be what they would like.
agreed with that, and that was kind of that whole article, and even my talking point just a second ago was one of those that made me think that I know that it's his say, but there feels like in a development process, and two of the names that were brought up, if one of which doesn't catch, which I kind of hope doesn't happen, that now that they do have Crooks and they can go Crooks Pajes potentially like next year, a lot of that means that the Contreras is kind of blocking the progress of a couple of guys. And I thought the exact same thing. Like I said, because you can fill that role pretty quickly. Now you may not fill it with 20 homers, but I get the feeling that they think Herrera fills that gap pretty easy now, and has shown that he can if he stays healthy. Staying healthy may mean never catching again too.
I mean,
So you're right. You're exactly right, and that could be one of those corner outfield spots for Burleson. That's probably why they highlighted it, because I actually think he's a darn good first baseman, and I feel like that would check a lot of boxes off. But you're exactly right. I mean, it's one of those that I think you're better if Contreras comes back, but I think that you have that spot filled if he doesn't.
yeah, I mean, Herrera's got 16 home runs as it is right
Yeah,
now, and he's played 30 something less games than that. So yeah, I think you replace that. I gotta say, I mean, I kind of expected I'd have to look and see how I filled out the form before I sent it out to everybody, so I can get it all in there too. But I kind of felt like Sonny Gray would be gone. I kind of thought Wilson Contreras would stay, but um, you look at what the Cardinals are wanting to do here, and the fact that it's going to be much more of a rebuild. I mean, they're really going to use that term more, and you wonder, as much as passionate as Contreras has been about being in St. Louis, if that changes his mindset. I mean, do you think out of the three, Nolan Arenado, Sonny Gray, and Wilson Contreras, do you think any of them are back next year?
it's funny. That's the exact same question I was getting ready to ask you.
I
The
got to it first.
yeah, I I believe there's a world where we see Gray and Contreras back. Um, and I don't know, and I think some of the Gray situation, I think they will probably approach him and say, "Listen, We know you chose St. Louis due to proximity to home, all those things. Do you want to be closer to a winner? I think all that stuff's going to come about.
Mhm.
I also don't know if that's going to be as hard to sell, mainly because they don't have anybody that's going to throw enough innings.
Well, yeah.
And I think that may be part of the equation on whether they even go to him and ask him. Now, as a professional courtesy, I think that they have to. And I
Mhm.
do think, and I still go back to what we talked about a little bit before the deadline of, I was listening on Foul Territory. They were insisting that, hey, I think he was much closer now to saying that he would accept a trade than he ever has been. And I thought, well, okay, well, that probably says a lot, and it's not surprising at all. So you do wonder if that's something that could happen fairly quickly. Would I be surprised if all of them are gone? Maybe a little bit. Not definitely not shocked. I do feel, and I mean this, and I kind of hate it. I think there's going to be. I think that I don't know if Arenado's back anyway, and I think that
Mhm.
even may have to be an eat money situation, and that may be the term of hey, that's why now the excuse is we are in a full tool, in a full out rebuild mode, and some of that is we're just gonna have to eat some money on some of these contracts that we can't move on. And I think that hopefully they can come up to something amicable. Like I said, I expect him to go to Milwaukee and be an MVP next year. But still, I think that that's the name that's definitely gone. I would not be surprised if the others are back. I don't know a scenario where all three are gone.
I mean, I could see one, um, because I do think the Cardinals will honor whatever they can on these guys, and it's freeing up money. I mean, who knows? Even if you're eating half the contract, that's half the contract you're not paying.
Yeah,
Um, I could see. I mean, I can make a scenario where like all three individually, or maybe all three completely stay. But I'd be a little bit surprised if all three stayed.
yeah,
But I think I'd be you're right on Nolan, but you know Nolan having such a I just don't know who's trading for Nolan, and the fact
yeah,
that he's got I mean, if you paid all of his contract or three quarters of it, maybe somebody would take him because of the glove, but it's got to be a contender, and I don't know what that looks like. So could I see? I could see a situation because I mean, if you trade Brendan Donovan because he's at the height of his value, and he's probably not going to be here when you're ready to contend, and if you go move on from Nolan Gorman, what does that look like? I mean, do you place a JC at second every day and Weatherholt at third every day and um all that kind of stuff? I don't know if that's the case. Um I I just wonder if they trade enough people, if Nolan isn't playing third, at least in some fashion, if it's not every day, and is that veteran leadership? Because if they trade Gray and if they trade Contreras, I mean, you're looking at Burleson and Wynn and Donovan. I mean, if they trade Donovan, you're looking at those guys as the only real leaders in the clubhouse, and that's not bad. But you wonder if there's not at least some value in having a Nolan Arenado in the clubhouse as well. I know that 2 or 3 years ago the knock on him was that he wasn't that much of a leader, but I felt like he's adjusted some. So I could see a scenario where he would come back. I do think it's probably much more likely that he expands his reach and what it means to be a contender and what it's comfortable with his family and moves on. But I mean, I could see a situation where he comes back next year.
yeah. I would think. I mean, me personally, I think Nolan accepting a trade is a gold mine for the Cardinals because I
Mhm.
I just don't feel like it ends that way. I
Yeah, I
feel
mean,
like I think there's a buyout situation that's coming.
and that's possible too. Um, but I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think the Cardinals would rather have that money, have him on the team if they're paying him
Yeah,
rather than, you know, because I mean, why? I mean, I don't know what that buyout looks like. Are they going to pay for the 2 years of salary, um, and just release him basically? I don't know. I mean, I don't know that it's quite to that point. I mean, because he's not. I mean, he's at worst replacement level, right? I mean, he's still got the glove.
Yeah,
The bat is iffy, but we saw last night, at times, and then how much of it. I guess it may depend on this next couple week. How much did that shoulder bother him this year?
yeah,
I mean, is he going to be able to strengthen it even more off the offseason and come back? So, um, my feeling is if they can't trade him, they'll find no use for him. But
sure.
I think that I can understand why people would think maybe the DFA type of thing would and let him go and pick his own place without because I mean if Nolan Arenado's on the free agent market, he gets signed. I just, I think somebody would sign him. But I just don't, they may not trade for him. So maybe that's the way it goes.
Yeah, yeah. That's and it's one of those. Is that a situation where he says no, I'm staying, we can't work anything out? Then Donovan definitely has to go. Because
Mm.
in a situation where I think you'd have to play Weatherholt at second every day. I mean, I'm under the assumption that Weatherholt plays every day next year,
Yeah.
and I mean, I almost feel like you have to, meaning that someone
Yeah.
will have to be forced out regardless.
Right. Yeah.
So,
I would trade Nolan, no, Brendan Donovan pretty much no matter what the situation is because the Cardinals have done a terrible job in the past of maximizing value, right? They have hung on to guys way too long.
yeah,
Or they've not taken advantage of the fact that that was a career year. And I'm not saying that Brendan Allen had a career. Oh, he had a really good year.
yeah,
Um, but you look at the fact that he's one of the few pieces on this team that you could trade and get something back of some value. I mean, I think you have to do that, and
yeah,
that helps clear that log jam up. Not, I mean, I hate to say that because I think Donovan's a great player on the
yeah,
team, and
yeah.
it would be terrible to lose him, but um, yeah, it's hard to see how the pieces work. I think that's the easiest way to start freeing up that logjam.
Yeah, I hope this makes sense, but well, one, I'm a huge Donovan fan and always have been. Um, Mainly, this can go a bunch of different directions. That's just my type of player. Uh, Donovan would have been great on the good Cardinals teams. Does that make sense? He would have checked off a ton of boxes on a lot of those teams that were really, really good because he can do so many things. I don't know if that skill set's going to be beneficial to what they have coming. As much I would love for him to stay, and I
Yeah.
would love for there to be an extension, but I just don't know if that's going to play because you just don't have the stars that you would have had, on the heyday run, years
Hmm.
ago.
Right.
And so yeah, you're right. I mean, if you want to trade and he can go help a contender right now in a lot of different ways. Yes, yeah, that's probably a move that has to be made. I just don't. I'm really curious and somewhat excited and somewhat nervous about how they fill out the day to day and how it's going to look. And, that's a guy that can play a bunch of different positions to help, but maybe at the peak of his value where he is contractually and all that stuff and probably does have to go.
Yeah. I mean, that is the nature of the game. I mean, the business part of the game is sometimes you let players go that you don't want to because of situation around them. And so we'll see. But I do think, I mean, again, we're projecting a lot on Chaim Bloom, but it really feels like these winters that we've always said they have to move stuff, that things are going to happen this year. Whether like I said, even if it's just clearing the cupboards and getting stuff ready for the next good team that's going to be 4 or 5 years down the road. Um, and I mean that's even hard to say, right? I mean, hopefully it's faster than that, but just to already know. We're gonna be doing shows in 26 and 27 that, we're just kinda playing out the string, starting in June. I mean, it's I don't for us as a personal standpoint, we've not done this, right? I mean, we've,
Yeah,
tried to
agree.
figure out how to do a podcast about a team that is, rebuilding, when you're not paying as much attention to what happens on the field. We'll see how that goes. Um, maybe Maybe it's time to rebuild the podcast too. I don't know.
Sure. I mean, we're going to be in uncharted territory. There's no doubt about that. And I had thought about that. I mean, we're going to have to be breaking down a bunch of the guys that are coming and going, and where they stand, and in the development process, which we haven't had to do much.
No, no, and I don't. We'll see if we can actually do that. But yeah, it's going to be an interesting run. I mean, it's going to be definitely different, and we're going to have to look at. I think as Cardinal fans, we're going to have to look at baseball a lot differently than we have. Right? We're gonna. And I know there is a section of the fan base that even approached that this year as well, right? It's like, okay, it's not going to be good, but we're going to see what we get, and hopefully the results on what we get on some of these players are more positive than what we got this year because we got answers. I think Katie pointed out, the Cardinals got answers this year. They just didn't like most of them,
Yeah.
and I think that's the case, right? I mean, we thought that Nolan Gorman would, take off, and he didn't. Lars Nootbaar stayed healthy, but it didn't necessarily translate. So those kind of things are, you know, hard to. That's not the way we wanted this year to go, and it puts them a little farther back. Because if Nolan Gorman had done what we thought he would do, if Jordan Walker had made that next step, I think even if the Cardinals are saying, okay, we're going to rebuild, we feel better about it because, okay, well, they've got that core there that you can start developing around. And now, I mean, like you said, Wynn and Herrera, and, as much as I love Mason Wynn, and the defenses, I would not let him go. It's also hard to say, is that a core player? I mean, what kind of core is Wynn and Herrera versus, the cores of the past?
Yeah. Yeah. I thought about that. To me, defensively, he fits the mold of um, he fits what historically St. Louis has been known to be. To me, and there's a lot of marketability with Win, and I hope they really catch on to that, and that's why I kind of feel like the next year of the up and comers is going to. Why this may be a multi-year deal is if your Weather Holtz and your Crooks and everybody who gets an everyday playing chance next year, if they do what most of the guys that they gave runway to this year do, then it's going to be a problem. But I think that if you have any kind of uptick, I think you have to sell and market Win pretty quickly.
Oh yeah.
Because I think that that's a guy that's going to be a stud. I mean, if I think it's going to be highway robber if he didn't win the Gold Glove this year.
Mhm.
And I feel like you have to base a lot of those things on that. I think another thing in St. Louis, considering who Win is, the personality, the demographic. I hate to say, I feel like you need to push that in a big, big way
Yeah.
because I think that he could be a star in this market.
Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt that Mason Wynn is face of the franchise from that aspect going forward. Whether you
Yes.
extend him or not, he is. I mean, he's going to be he may be one of the few faces that's coming back for next year. But yeah, he's done what he needs to do. He's taken the steps. He's put together a track record, and again, the fact that he's maybe your best player is a little bit of a problem, but he is still a very good player. And I think that that's a guy that, besides the fact that we've talked about personality wise and everything of that nature, um, he's the guy that you tie to. I just, I get a little bit scared when I see that just because I remember, although it's a different situation, but I still remember, how much they pushed Harrison Bader. And then, but that was right after he came up, and
Yeah.
it didn't
That
work out as well, but
and
that's a
that
different
still seemed like
situation.
a half measure to me, though.
Yeah,
Remember they didn't go all the way out. I mean, they brought him out for the new uniform and stuff like that, but you never
yeah,
felt like Bader was the guy that was. You knew that. I didn't feel like that was ever a long term answer, and I was a fan
no,
of his game.
yeah, and he's doing quite well with Philadelphia right now, which is
Oh
cool.
yeah,
Um, but yeah, I know it's different, but you still get a little bit of that, in that feel, and you know, I would hope that they would, eventually lock Wynn down to some sort of extension, um, just to make sure that we don't go through a little bit of what we've been going through the last few years, right? Of a guy getting to arbitration and maybe they, have some battles here and there, and then they wind up getting traded. I think the Cardinals have somebody pointed out, I think it's Jeff Jones has pointed out that the Cardinals have traded pretty much everybody they've gone to, they go to an arbitration hearing with somebody, like another year or so they get traded. Which is another reason why Donovan might be on the trade
Yeah.
block. They went to that as well, but um, it's not necessarily combined, but there's probably some lines that run through that if they're not confident enough to avoid arbitration, that they're more likely to be able to turn him loose. Maybe that's something like that. I don't know,
Yeah.
um, but again, we continue to put the old template of what we
Yes.
know out of John Mozeliak and company onto this future, and it's going to be a while, I think, before we get a real feel of what's a Chaim Bloom move. We know what John Mozeliak move is. It's to sign Miles Michaels back to another extension. But, what is our stereotypical Chaim Bloom move? And I think it's gonna be a while before we figure that out.
Yeah. Yeah, the risk aversion question is going to be the big one for me because I
Mhm.
think that's what Mo and or ownership was known for.
Yeah. Yeah. So and again, I hope that and I think we're gonna see, we may have different front office dynamics here in a little bit too. Not even front office, I mean, we're gonna have different front office to ownership, because they're not gonna be they like Chaim Bloom. They've given him a contract, but they just don't have the history with Chaim Bloom that they did
Yeah.
with John Mozeliak. So that's gonna be different. It's gonna have to be different. And again, Bill DeWitt Jr. is 82 and seems to be in good health, although, obviously years are getting on him. Um, what does that look like? What does that look like in 5 years, when he's 87 and, you know, maybe not as good a shape? I know that there's probably a succession plan for Bill DeWitt III. What does that look like? As a guy that's coming out of the business side of things, is he going to be more focused on the bottom line versus, spending money to get talent and get people in the seats? I mean, we don't know. I mean, there's a lot of uncertainty around the Cardinals, that we haven't seen probably in 30 plus years. And so it's going to be, a while before we can adjust to that.
Strange times.
Pretty much.
That's just stuff we're not used to.
Pretty much. So
Yeah.
Cardinals have 2 more with Milwaukee, and then they go on the road for that final week, San Francisco, and then the Cubs, um, playing playoff teams or teams that are trying to be in the playoffs. I don't know if there's anything. I hope Sunday's game is well attended. Last game in Busch. Other than that, I don't know that there's a whole lot to really look for over the last week.
Yeah. Yeah. Just the play out the string aspect. I mean, by the time we're here next week, I mean we're they're in it. I mean they're in the off season at that point. You'll have two games left and in Chicago they're day games and the last late one of the year will be Wednesday. And
Right.
then they play
Yeah.
3 day games in Chicago, and then and it's all over.
Wow. Yeah. Hard
Mm.
hard to believe that's where we're at. And hopefully there will not be a significant delay in the postseason press conference. Um, some years it's the day after the season, some years it doesn't happen. Um, and I think I read somewhere that John Mozeliak's contract runs through the end of October, although the transition is probably already happening. I think it would be I think we have to have a Chaim Bloom press conference in some point in time in this thing, and I'm really, really interested to see what he has to say. I mean, pretty much completely silent all year long, right? I
Yeah,
mean, I think maybe I didn't read them, but I think I heard something about maybe he had an interview or something in the official magazine, but take that for what it's worth. Um, I'm very, very interested to see him, face the media, as it were, and really kind of articulate what he's thinking and what his vision is for this next few years and how that's going to work out.
Yeah. The just adds to the intrigue, really.
Yeah, does. All right. Well, we'll be back next week. Talk about the end of the season. We will be here some in the winter. We're pretty good about October, November, December get a little bit more spotty, but just subscribe and follow us. You'll find us when we put it out. But until next time, for Alan, I'm Daniel. Good night.
Good night.
St. Louis fans are one of a kind, and you'll